it's Miss Jess, and I'm so glad that you've made it through our Tales with Tales adventure all the way to the final 3 chapters of our very last book, The Dragons of Blueland. And Nora and I can't wait to find out exactly what Elmer is going to do with all the things he brought along this trip to rescue the dragon family. Let's get started. Chapter 9, Blueland. Elmer and the dragon dozed on until late afternoon. They were both impatient to be off, but as Elmer said, we'd only spoil everything by getting there before it's dark enough. So they waited and rested and drank cool mountain water. The dragon munched ferns while Elmer ate his 3rd chocolate bar. "I can't stand it any longer," said the dragon, jumping up and shaking out his wings. "All right," said Elmer, "let's go." He put on his knapsack and climbed onto the dragon's back. They walked to a clearing in the woods, and the dragon took off across awful desert. It was hot over the sands, even in the late afternoon, and Elmer crouched over to hide from the burning winds. The dragon panted for air, but flew faster and faster, hardly daring to think what might have happened since he left. He kept muttering, "If only the sandstorms would start up. Where are the sandstorms? That would make the men leave us alone." When they came to the dry, rocky slopes of Blueland, the sun was low on the horizon, and they knew it would soon be dark inside the circle of mountains. "Keep a sharp lookout," warned the dragon as they picked their way through the boulders. "They may have men most anywhere." Up, up they went slowly, quietly. At last they reached the gap between the peaks, and Elmer gasped at the sight below him. The beautiful meadows of Blueland shone bright green, dotted with patches of snapdragons glowing white in the dimming light. And at the center, the lake water reflected the pink of the sky. Suddenly it was gone into darkness as the sun set. But the dragon had been straining to see across the lake, and suddenly he grabbed Elmer for joy. "The men! I saw the men! And they were still standing outside the cave with the net. Maybe we're not too late." He hurried Elmer down to the giant snapdragon bush, which hid the entrance to the little tunnel. "I don't think they found it," he whispered happily, as he pulled aside the roots and rocks. "Neither do I," agreed Elmer, looking all around to be sure he'd remember the spot. Then he took off his knapsack and unpacked one whistle, one horn, the flashlight, and the ball of string. "Lower your neck so I can measure the strings for your whistle and horn," he said, getting out his jackknife. "Why do I have to have them on strings?" asked the dragon. "I don't want you to drop them. If the men never see them, maybe they'll never guess what happened." The dragon laughed and tried out the strings to make sure he could reach the horn and whistle easily. "They're fine," he said. "Now I'll wait here until you tell me it's time. Look, the men are building a campfire. They must be having supper." "So much the better," said Elmer, as he started down into the tunnel with his knapsack. "But how will your family know I'm your friend?" "Tell the Boris sent you." "Boris? Is that your name?" "Yes," said Boris uncomfortably. "I was embarrassed to tell you before." "It's no worse than Elmer," said Elmer. "I suppose not, and it's certainly not so bad as some in my family. I might as well tell you the rest. My sisters are Ingeborg, Eustacia, Gertrude, Bertha, Mildred, and Hildegard, and my brothers are Emil, Horatio, Conrad, Jerome, Wilhelm, Dagobert, and Egmont. Can you imagine? But hurry, I can't wait to hear what's been happening to them all." Once inside the tunnel, Elmer snapped on his flashlight and shot it over the damp walls. The ceiling was high enough so he could walk easily. Down, down he went, around curves, through small rooms, and then more narrow tunnels, until at last he came to the place where the dragon had got stuck. He heard scratching and scraping noises, and he knew he must be very close to the dragon's family. "It's Elmer Elevator, Boris's friend," he whispered as bravely as he could. "Who?" Elmer elevator! Boris's friend! Boris is out at the tunnel entrance, and I've come to rescue you." "Turn off your light and come in," whispered another voice, and Elmer walked slowly into the darkness. He stopped and felt himself surrounded by huge forms, breathing excitedly. "We can't tell you how grateful we are," said the gigantic dragon mother. "Never mind that," whispered the father. "What's your plan, and how can we help? We're almost starved to death." "Oh, have some chocolate bars," said Elmer, generously giving away his last 3. "Here, I'll open them up for you and divide each one into 5 pieces. I'm afraid it's not much, but it ought to help a little." He held his flashlight inside the knapsack and divided up the chocolate as he explained his plan. They all chuckled low dragon chuckles and began to feel much better. Then Elmer made string necklaces for horns and whistles for all the dragons and carefully tied them on. He wanted to take a really good look at the tremendous family, but they were near the entrance to the cave and he had to keep the flashlight in the knapsack. As he took out his cat pistol, he asked, "Do you know how heavy the net is and how it's fastened across the entrance?" "No," said the father dragon. "Well, I'd better look," said Elmer. He quietly crept up toward the net, but the men were sitting close by and he didn't dare get near enough it to see well. "We'll have to trust to luck," he told the dragons as he started back through the tunnel to Boris. Chapter 10, Escape. "Boris, Boris," whispered Elmer from under the snapdragon bush. "Are they all right? What's happened?" "Nothing's happened. Everyone's all right and we're ready to go. I couldn't see the net, but we'll hope for the best. Did you say one of the men is called Frank?" "Yes, I heard them mention a Frank and an Albert." "Good. I'll meet you here afterwards. I told your family you'd have to take me back and that you'd find them near here someplace." "Fine," said the dragon. "I can't wait." "All right now, I'm going back. Remember, as soon as you hear my cat pistol the 3rd time, you're to make as much noise with the horn and whistle as you possibly can." Elmer turned back down into the tunnel and hurried to the big cave. Everyone was ready. "Boris will be your signal," he explained. "As soon as you hear him blowing his horn and whistle, you are all to blow as hard as you can in every direction. I'll yell 'Boris' when it's time to charge, but look carefully at the net before you try to pass by. I don't know where the opening will be. Ready?" whispered Elmer, his heart pounding so hard he was sure it must echo through the cave. "Ready," whispered the 15 waiting dragons. Elmer crept up close to the net. The men were unrolling blankets and getting ready for the night. There was no moon. "Perfect," thought Elmer. He took out his cat pistol and fired at once. Then, "Help! Help!" he cried in a gruff voice. "Get me out of here! I'm trapped!" The men jumped up, tripping all over their blankets and bumping into one another. What was that? Somebody's in the cave. "Frank! Albert! Help! Help!" yelled Elmer again. "Come, let's hurry," said the men, and they began moving great boulders off the edge of the net. "So that's how they fastened down the bottom," thought Elmer. "That should make it easy." Then he shot off his pistol again and cried, "They got me! Help!" The men frantically rolled away the boulders. Just as they began pulling aside the heavy net, Elmer shot off the pistol for the 3rd time and ran back into the cave. Boris heard the 3rd shot and began blowing his whistle and horn and running up and down over the meadow. As the noise echoed over the lake, the 15 trapped dragons started in on their whistles and horns. Noise roared wildly through the cave, back and forth across the lake, and echoed madly around the circle of mountains. Some of the men had started off when they heard Boris. The others, who had been about to rescue Elmer, ran out of the cave in terror. Elmer shouted, "Boris!" and raced back through the tunnel. The 15 dragons surged toward the entrance. found where the men had pulled aside the net, and poured through the opening, trampling out the campfire as they came. Into the sky they zoomed, still blowing their whistles and horns. Then they disappeared into the darkness, leaving 13 men scattered over the meadows where they had fled, and 3 men sitting in the lake water where they had jumped. "What happened?" said Frank to Albert. Chapter 11. The Dragon Affair. Elmer ran up to the tunnel to Boris, and away they flew long before the noise had stopped echoing among the mountains. "Well, that's that," said Elmer, panting for breath and reaching for his second box of fig Newtons. "Gosh, Elmer, I can't thank you enough," said the dragon. "Never mind that. I never had so much fun in my life. But you'll have to hurry me back to Seaweed City. I've got to take the train home as fast as possible." Over the desert they flew, and the wind grew stronger and stung Elmer's face. "I think a storm's coming up," said the dragon. "I can smell the sand in the air." "Wonderful!" cried Elmer. "The men will have to leave Blueland, and maybe you'll never be bothered again." Over Spiky Mountain Range they sped, reaching the outskirts of Seaweed City at midnight. "How about leaving you on top of the monument?" suggested the dragon. "Then I won't have to land on the ground." "Fine," said Elmer, and the dragon glided onto the top of Seaweed City Monument, overlooking the center of the city. "Goodbye for the last time," said Elmer. "I'm sorry that I never really got to see your family. They must be magnificent. But tell them from me that nobody will ever know more about them than they do right now, except for our friend, the old alley cat. I'll tell her all about it." "Goodbye. I'd better hurry home too," sobbed the happy baby dragon. He clumsily hugged Elmer, and off he flew. Elmer finished up the fig Newtons, saving 1 box for the train, and climbed down the mountain. Quickly he walked to the railroad station and asked for a ticket to Nevergreen City. "Isn't it rather late for a boy of your size to be taking the train alone?" asked the ticket agent. "I suppose so," said Elmer, giving the man $7.27. The man shrugged his shoulders and handed Elmer a ticket. "I can't get used to boys these days," he muttered. "By the way, there's a train in 20 minutes. Gets you down in Nevergreen at noon." "Thanks," said Elmer, jingling the 9 cents he had left in his pocket as if he were used to taking trains in the middle of the night. When the train thundered into the station, Elmer climbed aboard. "What are you doing? Running away from home?" asked the conductor suspiciously. "Oh, no, sir. On the contrary, I'm on my way there now," said Elmer, looking the conductor straight in the eye. "Have it your own way," said the conductor, punching the ticket. Elmer slept right through to Nevergreen City. He walked up the front steps of his home just as his mother was making herself some lunch. "Elmer, Elmer, you're back, but you look half-starved." "I am," said Elmer, hugging his mother and sitting down at the table. He ate 3 bowls of tomato soup, 5 slices of pumpernickel bread, 4 glasses of milk, 6 fried eggs, and 2 huge pieces of sponge cake. Then he went to talk to the cat. It wasn't until the next morning that the dragon affair came out in the Nevergreen City news. "Listen to this," yelled Mr. Elevator, reading aloud at breakfast. "A fantastic and unexplainable escape took place in the great high mountains of Blueland late Sunday night. 15 dragons, a wonder in themselves, as they have long been believed extinct." And the newspaper story went on to tell about the brave men who had fought their way back through treacherous sandstorms to tell the most momentous story of our time. "Unbelievers who doubt this story," continued Mr. Elevator, reading aloud from the paper, "will find it difficult to dismiss the following supportive evidence of the presence of dragons in this region." Then he proceeded to read about a ship stationed off the coast of Popsicornia, which twice had sighted a strange flying beast, once with a boy atop it, and about a certain Mr. Wagon Wheel, who claimed also to have seen it twice, once on the ground near his farm, and once in the air with a boy aboard over Seaweed City. And about Chester DeWitt, a small boy who also claimed he'd seen the dragon over the city the preceding Thursday evening. Lastly, there was a short bit about the conductor and the ticket agent who wondered if the boy they had seen late Sunday night could have had anything to do with the case, and so on. Mr. Elevator dropped the paper and stared at Elmer. "Did you have anything to do with all of this? I just don't understand your strange trips away from home." "Me?" said Elmer, choking on a piece of toast. "Why, Father, you don't mean you really believe all that nonsense, do you?" The end. And that is the end of the 3 tales of my father's dragon. I hope you had as much fun on our Tales with Tales journey as I did. Honora and I were so glad that you were able to join us. I hope to see you again sometime soon.